So recently I've been reading about Stephen Bartlett's I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, Bartlett. The Diary of CEO, his book. And I think it's like 30 laws of business 30 laws of business, family and relationships and everything like that. And so I was thinking today we'll just go over like 3 powerful principles of his. And yeah, let's go ahead with it. So the first one was fill your 5 buckets in the right order. And the way it goes is like the 5 buckets is like the first one is like your knowledge, what you know. The second one is skills, so what you can do. The third is like your network, which is who you know. And the fourth is resources, what you have. And fifth is reputation. What would the world think of you? So it's like, this is like a good framework you can use to, in a way, find your purpose and also live with like truthfully to your purpose in a sense. And it's like a framework basically for using other than Ikigai and those things.
So why does, all right, so it's just, okay, so these 5 buckets. Why the 5 buckets?
Well, the way it actually works, right, is that before any of the other things, you need knowledge. Like you need to have knowledge. If you want to provide, okay, to put it into context, like this is more of like finding what your purpose is and being able to live with your Ikigai. Which gives you, I think, like something that you enjoy is like it gives you opportunities, makes you also money as well and things like that. So when you think about anything, like you need to have some sort of knowledge on a topic. And the thing is, everyone has a specialized field of knowledge of something. Like probably as a kid, you did a lot of swimming. So you know everything and you're probably like maybe not an expert, but you're a lot better than beginners and intermediate people at swimming. So you're probably advanced. Or maybe you played basketball a lot, or maybe you build Legos or something. So you're a professional at building like models and stuff like that. So everyone has knowledge of something. And I think that's like the best place to start. It's like, what do you actually know? And yeah, so beginning from that, and then the next part is like the application of the knowledge, which is a skill. So how do you apply the knowledge that you have? And then once you are known for, when you go out there and you do jobs for people and things like that, then you start to then get network because people then know you for like a skill that you have. And then because you know people, you can leverage off that. It's like, oh, who else do you know that would be interested in me doing this job for them, or like this skill that I have that I can apply to add value to them? And you get network. Then after that, you get the resources because now you have a lot of network and people. Now you have access to other pieces of information or other things. Like someone can get you like probably investment, or someone can get you someone else who knows about this company that you can partner with. So you get resources. And then the last thing is like reputation, where it's like now because you've got network and resources and you're expanding and you're scaling, now you're becoming more, and you have probably marketing, you're becoming more international, you're getting more reach and people are becoming...
So I guess my question was, what is the purpose of the 5 buckets? And it's to find the purpose and what you're fulfilled in doing.
Yeah, finding purpose and fulfilled in what you're doing. And it's like the foundation, basically, of you being able to fulfill your purpose. And how it just like expands, basically. And this can be applicable across like, if you want to learn a new skill, it's like you need knowledge and then you just work your way in from the beginning with knowledge. And I feel like the most investment of time, right, should be, well, based on what I've read, should be on the knowledge and the skill, like perfect, like getting as good as you can with that, because you can actually lose the other 3 things. Like it just takes one mess up for me to lose my network, like literally. And after I lose network, I don't get access to resources, then my reputation gets negatively affected. But things that no one can take away from you is your knowledge and your skill. No one has the right, or no one can take that away from you.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that's why I think like, you know, personally investing in yourself with whatever courses or whatever you really need and the tools you need to just go and learn and then like apply it isn't really a bad thing. It's actually positive, because the way you should actually look at it, even though you're spending so much time to acquire the knowledge and get the skill, is that it's a lifelong thing. No one can take it from you. Whereas if you're putting your emphasis on like the network and all those things can be taken away from you from one little mistake. So yeah, I thought that was quite insightful. It's quite different.
Yeah, it goes back to what Alex Hormozi talks about it quite well. I think he had the right skills and the knowledge in starting his gym. His business might have betrayed him, I think, or something along those lines. And he came back and built better, knowing the knowledge and skills he had learned over the years. And, you know, I think in that instance, he also had a network of resources and reputation. So that helped. But without that, you're right. The skills and knowledge you can't get anywhere without knowing what you're talking about or what you're trying to do or what you're trying to achieve. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and I think like that's like the foundational bucket, which is like you can think of it like the way you can think of it is like it's like the big huge bucket, because you can think of like the bucket as like the size of amount of time you're going to invest into it. So it's like the knowledge and skill will be the biggest. Mm-hmm. Maybe the knowledge might be the biggest one, and then you start if it's like 5 liters or something, and the rest are like 1 liter or something. Then you pour onto each of them, but like the knowledge is the one which will require the most amount of time. And is skill as well. But I feel like we can also fall into the trap of investing so much time that we fall into the imposter syndrome, where it's like, how do I know that I'm actually now, and I've reached a state where now I'm adequate to go and ask people where I can do the job, or like go and reach out for network.
I think knowledge and skills also comes from doing it. A lot of it. I think that's what he would probably emphasize on. He's actually just doing what you need to, because your day 1 of doing it compared to your day 1,000 of doing it is going to be completely different. You know, we spoke to Nafizzle about detailing. His first detail compared to his 40th detail is night and day difference. You know, but another thing is knowledge and skills is something that you build over time as well.
Bless you.
Sorry, I was having a sneeze. Yeah, like knowledge and skills is something that, like, there's no limitation on it. I mean, all 5 of them, there's no limitation. Like, your reputation will maybe stagnate at a point. Like, you know, once you've become, like, Elon Musk, for example, his reputation is billionaire, of SpaceX, Tesla, X, loves the word X for some reason. Good on him. But, like, now his reputation can't get any, I don't want to say better, but he can't expand his reputation anymore. Like, his network as well has hit a peak. But, well, yes, look, okay, what I mean by that, I'm not saying that he's Elon Musk, so he can reach out to anyone and build a relationship or a connection because he's got that credibility. But in terms of knowledge and skills, that's something that's going to evolve over time. Like, he needs to adapt, and he's still going to, I'm sure he's still learning a lot of things as he's going. So those are the things that have no cap to it.
Yeah,
even
true,
even your reputation network, it doesn't have a cap. But once you get to a point where you've got a certain credibility and like you've got really extreme credibility, and you can leverage that credibility, like, I wouldn't say that's a cap, but you've been able to not, I wouldn't say master it, but you're a lot more efficient with it. You're a lot more effective with it. You're not having to do a lot of work to build those networks. Networks come to you.
Yeah, like you've created systems in place to be able to leverage.
Exactly.
Minimize, yeah.
Like, people come to you instead of you going to people.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
And that's where it's like the reputation like sort of kicks in, because they know you as this individual who's like built these $1 billion companies. So that's why you get people that reach out to you. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's almost like your network that you've built up ends up actually becoming like they spread to other people. It's just like the network is also your network effect, basically. So yeah, definitely true. But yeah, I think like that's the thing. So yeah, knowledge and skills is like where you're gonna have the most investment of time. But think of it as like a long-term thing that's gonna end up actually going to be lifelong, which is always, and as you said, it's always going to grow. Like in day one, you're never going to be perfect. So you have to just accept that reality. And I think that's the hardest, that's the biggest obstacle we have, because it's just like that fear of perfection, fear of looking imperfect. And I think that's, you just only get better and better as you just go through failures and difficulties and just put yourself out there, to be honest. And I think another good frame to put yourself in is looking at things from like a third person objective, like perspective, third person perspective, where, you know, if you see a friend doing that little task, like, or that task you're doing, that skill that you're applying, you'd probably compliment them if it's the first time. But when you look at yourself doing it, you're very critical about it. So instead of looking at it from your own perspective of, because we're always going to be the harshest critics of ourselves all the time. If you put yourself in that third person perspective, then it completely changes the way you see it. You're like, oh, actually, I didn't do much of a bad job. Did I meet the needs of the customer requirement? I did. So can I do better? Yeah, I can always do better, but that's part of the process. But when you put yourself in that third person perspective, it completely changes how you see things. And you become a bit less critical of yourself. And obviously, it's always good to have the question at the end. It's like, how can I do better? But not using it in such a way that it's negative. Like perfectionism, where it's out of fear. It's out of more of like positive reinforcement of improving. It's more of, yeah. So I think it's more of excellence, basically, rather than perfectionism. So yeah, definitely very important. And I think part of, one of the quotes that he had there was like, those who have hard gold have riches for a moment. And he's like, those who hoard knowledge and skills have riches for a lifetime. True prosperity is what you know and what you can do. Because as we said, knowledge and skills is where everything comes. Like all the other networks and things only come from knowledge and skill. And it's so true.
And you've got to be able to demonstrate your value as well.
That's where like being persuasive comes in, sales in some sense.
But like being credible. Like why should someone trust you? Like selling yourself is one thing, but what are you actually selling? You know, if you can't sell your value, like if you have no value, there's nothing to sell. You know, so
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, definitely understanding. And as we said, like the previous episode, it's like the trilemma. And I love this framework. It's got it from like a friend. Basically, it's because we're always thinking about time, money, and family, or either relationships. How do you, in a way, how does your value help those three things, or like one of those three things? Okay, how are you saving time for this individual? How are you saving money for this person? Or how are you creating more money for them? And how is it affecting the connection between their relationships or friends, families? So when you put yourself in that frame, I think it makes it a lot easier for you to pitch. Definitely. And even beyond that, it's like when you're being a developer or someone who's producing a product, instead of just saying like, I'm just coding, just think about, what exactly are you coding? Like, how is this saving time for this customer? How are you adding value? Rather than like, oh, I just built a feature. I just coded this this page. Okay, like what does that do? Like, because in that space especially, and I think it happens because we're so good at our craft, we don't really think about the value we're providing. We just do it because it just sounds cool, or we're just building something. But for what reason are you building it for? How's it adding value? And I think when you put yourself in that trilemma, it really gives you it makes it a lot easier to pitch. It makes it more valuable. It gives you more purpose, I'd say, to fulfill it.
So it's basing the value of those three things.
Yeah, like always putting yourself in that frame. Like how am I, okay, if I say value, how am I addressing those three things? And it makes it, because it's a lot easier for you to structure like a pitch that way and be more persuasive. And then another thing that I learned was like price versus cost. Because like another thing is like, you might have services that are like, $1,000, $2,000 for some people. And some people it could be that like they don't want to pay that much. And obviously if you've tried some ways and they're very persistent that just don't accept it. Because you don't want to bring your price down for the sake of a customer, unless there's a partnership or something going on there. So the way you can think about that is price versus cost. You're paying the price for the short term, but it's saving you a lot in the long term. It's just like you address it in such a way where it's like, okay, what happens when you don't solve this problem for the 10 years? How much will it impact the amount of time that you're gonna have with your family, or the amount of money that you have to spend later on to solve this?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Which is why it's not worth going cheap. Not always going cheap. Like sometimes you have to spend a bit.
Yeah.
You have to, like, I mean, it's valuable to spend a bit, right? Like, let's be honest.
Of course, because like if you don't, then and it being in reasonable cost, but like if it's not, then you're just gonna end up spending more over time. You're gonna spend more time, which is finite, to solve those issues later on. So
Which brings on more stress and pressure on yourself for whatever reason.
exactly, and it's like if we go back to Naval, which is like easy choice is hard life, hard choice is easy life. In this case, it's just cost. Cheap products or cheap cost leads to expense of time in the long term, whereas expensive cost, well, not expensive, like relatively moderate cost, expensive, good quality will save you time in the long run and costs.
Well
So,
I do think though, currently, like back in the day, you'd probably be able to get cheaper things with really good quality that would last you years. You don't see that anymore.
it's because of our good friend inflation.
Yeah. And greed. Corporate greed is a big one.
Yeah, I think those two things together. I think like inflation, ultimately, things being more expensive has made people more greedy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, so people try and find cheap ways to do something to save costs and just get work done, as long as it works.
What have you found the most effective way to like build your knowledge and skills?
Yeah, that's a really good question because there's so many ways you can approach something. I think usually what I try to do is just create like some structure of what I'm trying to learn. Like if I'm trying to learn this skill, okay, before even that, it's like, why am I learning this? Like why? Because if I don't understand why I'm learning this and how it's adding value to me and for me to add value to other people, there's no point of me pursuing this. Because when the difficult road comes, I'm just gonna give up. So the why will matter in that stage. And after that, it's just like, okay, what's the I guess it's like more of like a sort of curriculum approach. Like what are the stages that I have to go through before it's almost like the best way to think about it is like playing a game. It's like, to get to level 50 or you want to use this weapon, you need to have like dexterity or you need to have like strength and all these stats. So that's the way I sort of frame it. And then once I have it in that curriculum type of approach, then I just break it down into like tasks that I need to do from like a monthly, weekly, and then daily. And then making it very specific. Like instead of saying building a website, that's so generic. Like break it down into like level 1, level 2, level 3 tasks. Okay, level 1 is me first researching what website am I gonna build. Then level 2 is like, okay, making a mock-up design of the website, and it's like these specific pages, about page, blah 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 blah. And level 3 would be then starting to just code, basically. I'll first just code this part of the website, blah blah blah, about us, whatever, so on and so forth. Or I'll acquire assets or whatever. So it's just breaking it down into like levels, but just to make it more fun. Think of it as like you're playing a game. It's gamifying it. What
That's
about
a good way.
What about yourself? Yeah.
Well, it depends. I just get right into it and just do it. Try doing it more. I learn more from doing things. Depends on the task again. Like sometimes you've got to be a bit more methodical and go into those levels. But sometimes I find just putting my hands on and doing it, I learn a lot more from that than trying to build too much reasoning or logic or rationale. But I think what helps is documenting that sort of what I'm learning helps as well. Like today I've learned this. This means this. This means this. Like going into that a bit. But it's like a very basic level dot points, which helps a lot.